remind people that you're broadcasting?
Are we good? Good. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Keene Board of Education Finance Committee for Tuesday, February 4th. We've got a few members of the public here, and we are also live streaming. We're in the Jonathan Daniels Conference Room on Maple Ave. I'm Jacqueline Headings. I'm Chair of Finance Committee. We'll get this meeting started. Public input will begin now. Is there anyone who has public input at this time? Yes, go ahead. Come on up to the microphone, please. And then state your name and address for the record. Yeah.
Just once.
It's Jason Washer, 8 Roosevelt Street in Keene. I just had a quick question. I'm mostly just here to listen, but I attended the budget meeting at the high school a couple days back, and I wanted to ask a question that I didn't get a chance to. I know Mr. Rohr had mentioned that the various principals and whatnot had requested what they needed to run the budget, and then you said that that on top of that you had given them about $500,000. I'm just wondering what that specifically was for. I looked back through some papers. I couldn't quite suss it out in terms of what was what.
Are you referring to one of our committee level meetings or the first session this past?
I didn't attend the first session. I was referring to the meeting at the high school that I did attend. And so I know that in response to someone's question.
Forgive me, Mr. Washer. I know you were at some of them, but we had all of the meetings have been at the high school. We had two budget committee meetings beginning of January.
So
and we had public hearing the 21st.
So I would have gone to the one on the one where the public voted 51 to. There were 51 members of the public there.
This past Saturday.
Yes.
So that was first session at the high school in
great.
the auditorium. Yeah, I was going to say I thought I saw you there.
That's the one I'm referring to.
It's probably in the minutes. It definitely will be in the minutes, but I think that was done in the board meeting, not in the facility, the finance meeting. Right. So there was a finance meeting on the 11th, if I think my date is right, and the board added additional stuff to the budget that was not, some of it was not asked for or requested by administration. And it included things like additional co-curricular stipend based on longevity. It included a teacher restored to the budget from Bridges. It included a number of things. I have a list written down, which I don't have with me, so we kept track of all those changes, as well in the minutes from the January 11th board meeting. Yep. We'll list those.
Yeah, and I've got the minutes up, which is one of our first agenda items.
Okay, I'll take a look then.
Yeah.
Thought of a couple more things. It had a
go ahead, Tim.
It had a para for both Fuller and the Cheshire Career Center. And
there was full stipends for the co-curriculars?
Yeah, I mentioned that. Yeah. I don't think we had an additional BCBA. I think that's most of what I remember being in there, but I have a list. So
okay, great.
You can call my office tomorrow or just look at the minutes.
Yeah, I'll take a look at the minutes. Thank you.
The office.
Welcome. Thank you. All right. Okay. With that said, speaking of the minutes, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 11th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any corrections, additions? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Carries 4-0. And 1 abstain. Sure. It's all good. It's all good. All right, Mr. Rohr, financial report, please.
So the financial report is in the drive. Although the total is very similar to last month, there are some changes. So you'll see that last month we had about $3.5 million projected. In this month, we have about $3.5 million objected. Actually, it wasn't last month, 2 months ago. We don't do one in January because we're doing budget, but in December's meeting. But there's some changes, and I just want to highlight those. The tuition number is lower by almost $200,000 based on the latest January projection of where we'll end up, which is about 13 million, which is $200,000 less. If you look up here, you might be
I was
able
going
to
to
see
say
it.
it's smaller. I was making sure for the public and for what they're seeing, if we can make that a little bit bigger. See how you've got that one big, which is great, but I don't know who's controlling that monitor.
They're the same. It's the same
Okay.
size, just a smaller TV.
Ah, okay. Never
But if I
mind then.
make it
Carry
bigger,
on.
you won't
Now
be
we
able to
know.
see the
All good.
categories. But that TV out there is bigger.
Good.
That's
Okay.
the smallest one.
Good to know.
So
Tuition.
tuition, about $200,000. And state revenue shrunk to about a $211,000 surplus. Vocational aid, it looks like we're going to get less than we got last year by quite a bit, and less surplus than I projected. And we had 4 classes last semester not being run. You don't get much tuition if you aren't running classes. And so while we talk about the numbers being up, our vocational program really needs to get fully staffed and up and running. We are not at our peak, and I think Richard's really hoping to get there, but we're not there right now. And you can see that in revenue for this year.
And to be clear for the public, we're talking about classes at Cheshire Career Center.
Yes,
Yes.
we are. Regular instruction improved a little bit, and I'm looking at, I mean, right now I have about $80,000 unspent in software just at the high school. We are going to spend some of that because those bills haven't become due, but we are going to end up with some supplies, books, and software savings. About $100,000, I think. Special instruction, salary and benefits, that surplus went down. That's because of some budget transfers that have been transferred to health services, and you'll see that health services improved quite a bit. That's because we transferred money from special education salaries to purchase health services at the high school level, which is why you see those numbers flip-flop. We're still doing okay. Out-of-district tuition improved a little bit to a surplus of $572,000. Purchase service still looks okay. I think I talked about health services. I think the next area note is in district-wide services. We see legal fees now $58,000 in the hole, as well as on top of audit, leaves us overall in the hole there. We do have a lot of money encumbered in legal services. So if those projections for what we're going to spend don't come to fruition, we can see this pull back. But right now, it looks like we'll be overspending our line item. A lot of this has to do with, and I'm not going to get into specific cases or anything like that, but you remember what a tumultuous year we had to start, tragic year, and a lot of money has been spent towards making sure we're doing the right things and protecting our students. So we've spent a lot of money on outside counsel for those purposes. I think that's all I need to say right now. We're in decent shape. I'm hoping to hit this $4 million mark by the end of the year, and I think we will.
Great. Questions for Tim? Okay. None?
It's good.
No? Okay. Can I have a motion to accept?
Move to accept the finance report as informational.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carries 5-0. All right, next up, grant summary.
So the grant summary is pretty interesting. You'll see on this grant summary a lot of numbers, but what's important is the blue are grants that closed recently, right? What I don't really love about it is you see this number, $980,000, right? That's what wasn't spent out of grants that we could have spent last year. I haven't seen a number like that in quite a while. And the culprit is essentially Title I. They left $548,000 on the table. Only 15% of that, I believe, can be carried forward and may be carried forward. So that's a big loss. And we have needs, both at the high school and middle school. We met as a COLT team this morning, and I brought this up. We are going to have to make some changes, and we don't want the same thing to happen next year. We need the services. Our scores, we can use the services. So we will be writing plans this year for high school and middle school with Title I funds that are not being spent on elementary schools, as well as enhanced services at elementary. So that's in the works. That's important to note. The green ones are available money that now we might have written some of it or not all of it's allocated. And so you can see that we still have about $860,000 more to allocate for this year. Pretty big number. Some of these grants end in the summer or June, some end in September, sometimes they end in October. I don't think any of these do, mostly June and September. So just to keep you up to date on grants, and we get these reports every quarterly. The committee's really good at looking at this, but I don't think we've seen these kind of unspent, I haven't, so important to know.
Raleigh?
Hey, Tim, just to understand what comes from the federal, what comes from the state, IDA, EA, isn't that a federal grant? Is that
Yep.
administered by the state? Or any of these federally granted administered for the state, or is it all?
All the title grants are federally administered
Okay,
and run through the state.
okay, they are.
Yes, and the IDA grant as well. The only grant that I think, I don't want to say the only, the grant that comes to mind that's not run by the state is called RLIS. Do I see it on?
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
You do
just
see
below
it?
the.
Yep, we see it
about
there.
midway.
It's
Yep.
under Perkins.
Okay, so RLIS is a grant specifically targeting rural areas, and it's a pretty neat grant. We apply directly to the federal government, and we send all our paperwork to the federal government, and they pay us directly, which means the state doesn't get any piece of that grant.
Okay.
All the title grants flow through the Department of Ed, and there's a good reason for that. The Department of Ed does stuff for us,
Yeah.
and they take a piece of that money.
New
and
Hampshire
then-
DOE.
Yes.
Yes.
And then they send it to us. But RLIS cuts out any middle person.
A clarifying question. On the annual report, where you had the pie chart, and you had federal, I think it was around 11%, is that all of these? Or is it
Yes.
Okay, all right. So that's where that matches. Thank you.
Okay.
One question I had was the Title II-A, the professional development, is that sounds like what it really is, just teachers being able to further their education or take,
It's
secondary classes.
education. It's not like that. Let's say we wanted to put in a program about differentiating instruction as a district. We could write a grant and have workshops with our own teachers to educate them, professional learning communities, all kinds of things that we need to implement can be paid for. We can actually pay teachers to go to that training in the summer or something like that. So it's not necessarily just course reimbursement. It is all kinds of professional development that we might need to do to move the district forward.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like $81,000 on the table might be an opportunity there too, just,
Oh, definitely.
yeah, just something else to perhaps, I don't know if there's a certain person that spearheads that or whatever, but you said you had a meeting about the Title I, which I think is great, so I don't know if there's who's responsible for that, but that might be another. good
That would be
meeting, yeah.
Ben White,
Yeah.
Assistant Superintendent. So all these grants have a project manager.
Tim, can we expand a little bit on those RLIS? Because I am intrigued about some of those, and I see that, at least for two of them, they've got a start date sort of when we were coming out of COVID. But in terms of academic achievement for the description, is this, are any of these three, or some like just for the high school, some for the middle school, just one big bucket for elementary, middle, high school, do you know?
Oh, it's one big bucket,
Okay,
and these grants can be used for academic achievement or in the same guidance of any title grant we get. So these are the most flexible grants we have. You can
Okay.
use them to supplement 2A, Title I, IDEA. They're very flexible.
Okay. Other questions? Chris, go ahead.
Excuse me. When we talk about grants and we're talking about the possibility of having to give money back, but I don't think people realize how much $1 trillion is, or even $500 billion. If the federal government decides that it's going to go from a $2 trillion deficit to a $1 trillion deficit, a lot of that money is going to be money that comes down to the states, and the states will lose that money, which the towns and school districts will lose. So there is a lot of money at risk in the next 3 to 4 months as the continued resolution has to come up in March, and the state has to make its budget by June 30th. So if we have any money available, it would not be very advantageous to have to give anybody any of the money back. We need to use it wisely.
And Tim, for the one that we've got unspent money, is that also fall under Dr. White, or?
You mean the
You said you
Title I grant?
You said you all strategized today
We
at
did.
Central, so.
So I was concerned with the amount of money that Title I left. So we met, we talked about it. What I've done about it is I've asked Title I grant manager, whose name is Sean Bailey, thank you, drawing a blank. And Ben White helps to oversee Sean. Sean will be coming to our next finance meeting as we have that happen, give you an overview of Title I, and also talk about what we're going to do different so we have a better outcome for next year.
Right. You read my mind, because that was going to be my next question, is if we can have follow-up. Okay. So Mr. Bailey will be here at the March finance.
That's correct.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Any other questions? And remind me, do we just need to accept the grant summary as informational? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the grant summary as informational?
Make a move to accept the grant summary as informational.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to co-curricular. You all would have seen there's 2 separate documents, two PDFs, one for fall sports and one for winter. I assume we'll go chronological and start with fall. Was there anything you wanted to highlight, Tim? Or I know that
Well,
we had asked this of you.
Right. I don't know if you want to get into detail, if people have questions, but I will say that besides for a coach that didn't run, they took, what you really wanted to know is they took the strengths coach, which they didn't hire, part of one of them, I don't think it's on this page, and they used it to hire an additional coach for unified soccer, maybe.
Yeah, I was
A
gonna say
unified
there's a
sport,
unified
anyway. I'm sorry that
soccer.
I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly.
on the second page of the fall sports is a unified soccer.
Because we had a huge unified soccer team with lots of volunteers and participants. And they did very well. I think they came to runner-up in the state final. So it was a good year. But I believe we were looking for how that went, and if we were hiring coaches they didn't budget for, I think they've answered that question. If you wanted to go down through each one, I think people can do that on their own, but I did not prepare a presentation. But I looked at it and wanted to give you a general. What I see is no strength coach, and they used some of that savings to hire an additional assistant unified coach.
Gotcha. Kevin?
What does the green mean? And I'm just curious what the green.
I don't know, because I didn't create the document, and there's green spaces where no one exists, and there's green spaces where people, so I'm not sure it's consistent. And I'm not trying to be funny, I really don't know.
Fair, I just, curious question.
It looks good, though.
It does. Tim, with the unified soccer, and I also noticed it too, in the winter sports for the unified basketball, the head coach and the assistant coach rates are less than head coach, assistant coach in other sports. But maybe you just answered that question. Was it initially just the one head coach position and then we borrowed from another position that was unfilled?
The actual amount of each position is set by the schedule that the co-curricular committee did. Not all sports were the same. It was based on the number of games, practices, and length of schedule.
Got it.
So that the football coach's commitment starting in July might be longer than the, I don't know, pick something that doesn't go as long. The Alpine coach that has a short season, for example.
Got it. Very good. Thank you. All right. So that was the fall sports, especially for those at home. If we can just bring up the winter sports. Were there any questions on the winter sports? And again, Kevin, there's some of those green boxes, but no names and vice versa. So that was clearly, for the person who made this spreadsheet, some kind of tag that they made. All right, any other questions on the co-curriculars? All right. Tim, thank you for getting that to us. That's good to have. All right, let's move on to acceptance of gifts. I'm pleased to see we've got a number of them. Which one do you have up first? The Christie Archer, great. Wheelock School has received a $700 gift from the Christie Archer Education Enrichment Fund for the fourth graders at Wheelock to travel to the Mill Yard Museum in Manchester for a guided gallery tour and walking tour of the Mill Complex as part of their unit on New Hampshire history. Can I have a motion to move to recommend to the full board the acceptance of this gift for $700?
So moved with gratitude.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries 5-0. Excellent. Our next one, also for Wheelock, is a $1,320 gift from Keene Housing Kids Collaborative to support the grade 5 Trip to Nature's Classroom down in Groton, Massachusetts. This is, as I said, for the fifth graders who are specifically part of the homes that are supported by Keene Housing Kids Collaborative. Can I have a motion to recommend to the
moved with
full
gratitude.
board the acceptance of this gift?
Second.
Mr. Rush. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries 5-0. Right, and then our third gift, also to Wheelock. Wheelock got the trifecta this month. The next one is Wheelock received notification from the New Hampshire Environmental Educators that they received a $900 grant to provide transportation for our fifth grade students to Nature's Classroom. Again, this funds the trip, which this year is April 2nd through April 4th. Can I have a motion to recommend to the full board this gift as presented?
So moved with gratitude?
Excellent.
Second.
Okay. Clarifying question, Tim, there's no amount here. I'm assuming maybe at the time that it was received, the transportation was to be determined, or was there, wait, oh, never mind, there's a second page.
Yeah.
Apologize, yeah.
Yeah.
There it is, $900.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
Yep.
in there too.
excellent. Okay. With that said, all those in favor? Opposed? So carries 5-0. All righty, excellent. Budget transfers. There was just the two when I looked this afternoon. I don't see any others. Okay. And they're both for Fuller. Our first one is for transfer over to contracted services. If you can elaborate on that one a little bit, please, Tim. Was it first, is that 6,400 and $50. And we're transferring it from special ed teacher line item, and that's, to be clear, a vacant position. We're not taking away from any existing staff member. So the contracted services, that's just, again, we're hiring out as we've done in other positions. Okay, very
It's-
good.
It's purchased classroom assistant or LNA services.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right. Can I have a motion to approve this budget transfer as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Gratitude.
That's right.
It's a transfer.
Your second.
I'm still grateful.
All
I
right.
set you up.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carries 5-0. All right, next budget transfer. Slightly larger amount. This one's for $50,000 for health services. We've got 2 students at Fuller with IEPs requiring LNA certified staff, and we are transferring that out of budget line item for a tutor, which again is unfilled as a position. Can I have a motion to approve the budget transfer as presented?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries 5-0. All right, we are
That's it.
cruising along here.
So I got one quick question. So is this
Yes.
person coming in or is the student going out? The LNA coming into the school, just contracting out, but when the person in, correct?
We could not hire an employee as a classroom assistant, and so they hired a purchased LNA service to fill that role. We're bringing someone in.
Okay. All right, next up, cyber attack update. I know when we last discussed this, what would have been our December meeting, we were down to just a very small amount that we were waiting on. So what is the latest?
There's not a huge update, but I did meet with them recently. We're still about $26,000 short, which is a lot of money. But when you start at 2.17 million stolen, I'm thrilled with the results. Thrilled. And it's a good feeling. You call the police or the FBI, and they are just over the moon of how well we've done. So I'm really excited about that. But I've met with the bank recently and broached the situation that the money was really not stolen from us, but from the bank. And is their insurance company paying for the theft to replace the $26,000? I haven't gotten an answer yet, but you can see where I'm going with this. If our insurance company will pay it, if we so desire. I don't think it's enough that they would go to subrogation to sue the bank to get that $26,000 back, which is why I'm going directly to the bank. If we had lost $500,000, then our insurance company would require us to basically take action against the bank to try to get them to pay their portion. With such a relatively, I don't want to say it's a small amount, but in the scheme of things, it's a small amount. In the legal world, it's going to cost them $26,000 to go after the bank, so that's not going to happen. So we'll see where it goes, and I'll keep you updated. The FBI agent that's on the case did mention that they felt like they would have a prosecutor that was interested, a district attorney, I should say, in prosecuting this case, which made me think they made some headway, although I have no specifics, but that is what they said. Now, I haven't heard from the FBI agent since the FBI is kind of in a little bit of turmoil right now, and I'm being honest, and I don't know where this case or where we stand, but I'll reach out and make connection with our agent again if they're still there.
Okay, right. Well, and, go ahead.
Question on that, has the bank made corrections so this doesn't happen again?
Not that they've shared with us. We've made corrections
Right.
on the bank's end, but I don't know if they've changed in any internal structures, and if they have not shared that.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yep.
No? And Tim, I know we've discussed this multiple times since this happened, but again, just so it's documented in the minutes and we're live streaming tonight, you know, as you said, the bank has hopefully made the corrections at their end. As you mentioned, we've done things at our end. Can you just give a quick little summary of what we've done? Again, for somebody who may be hearing about this for the first time, I always feel like it's important for folks to understand, you know, what we already had in place and then corrective measures that we added
So-
on top of what we already have.
Prior to this happening, we already had, just on our accounts payable accounts, or our general accounts, each district could have 3 to 5 to 6 accounts. So, and we have 8 entities. So we're talking a lot of bank accounts that we're looking at. But we pay accounts payable out of our general account. That account, we do not allow ACH debits on currently. Like, we don't set any ACHs up.
Okay.
We do have a few payments that we have to make ACH through payroll prior to this. But in our general account, we had something called positive pay on. We mainly write checks out of it. And positive pay means every time you write a check, imagine in your own checkbook, you write 3 checks and put them in the mail. I guess we don't really do that anymore, but we can all remember when we did. Those checks would all be rejected by the receiver of those checks. Unless you went online and said, I wrote 3 checks in this amount, this check number to this person. All 3 of those things have to match when that person goes and cashes the check, or the check is null and void. That's huge. We put that on a couple years ago, and we've been working to put that on all the other accounts. Since the fraud, we've added positive pay on all our payroll accounts, which is a big deal. A lot of checks go out on payroll. It can be an inconvenience. If there's a glitch, they're not going to cash your check for you. They'll call us and we'll say, nope, that's not true. We've caught a number of fraud attempts based on just those measures that I told you about. Since then, we added ACH monitoring. In other words, any ACH request or payment that we make have to be approved by a series of approvers in my office, and they're not the people that can write the checks. That's new.
Yeah.
If we don't go in and approve, we get asked all the time now for fraudulent ACH. If they're not approved within 24 hours, they go away. They don't get paid. That's what we were in the midst of putting on when we discovered this, that if we had gotten to it 6 months earlier, but it's been a tremendous amount of work with the bank and coordinating. It's about building file templates, as you can imagine. We don't call them and say, oh, it's check number 9295. We send a big file that's got to be formatted correctly. I'm sure you guys can all imagine. But that is all up and running now. We are super excited about it, feel a lot safer. So
Great.
that's mainly what
Yeah.
we've done.
Bottom line, there's good measures in place, and as you said, this isn't, you know, we're here as Keene School District, but we have to remember that Tim and his office were overseeing all of SAU 29. So there is, as you said, a lot of districts, a lot of bank accounts. So the multiplier is pretty big. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that update. Project Keep update. Does that need to be in non-public or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We can talk about
Okay.
it in non-public if we talk about individuals or something. But I think in general, we've talked about it in public, and I'll just be
Sure.
general. So I've gotten a summary of the report that I hired an audit firm to go look at Project Keep. What spurred that on was an obvious lack of revenue that put the program at risk of basically going under. It's over $100,000 in the hole, but we, just last year, were shorted $110,000 in revenue. I believe we've had enough information and enough feedback that we have found no evidence of fraud or theft. Good news. Bad news is we found plenty of evidence of negligence and I'll leave it at that,
Okay.
where the job wasn't being done of collection. And the reason I wanted to talk about it in public is I've fielded a number of calls. So all 77 families that hadn't paid their whole bill, received a letter from me asking them to respond to our auditors to know if the accounting that I put on the paper was correct. In other words, it might say something like this. You enrolled your kid in this service, you incurred $2,000 in services, you paid $200, you owe us $1,800. Is that correct, or am I wrong? I didn't send any bills out. What I wanted to know was, if someone said, no, I paid all $2,000, I got to find out where the $1,800 was, right? I didn't have anybody do that. They were almost all automatic withdrawals that were not made, that should have been made from Keene School District to them. Some people did call and complain. There are other more detailed information, but that's where we are. To put it in perspective, we collected about $70,000 out of 180,000 possible.
What was that you collected again? What was that number?
70,000.
70K, okay.
Out of 108. You might notice if you were running a business, you only collected a third of your revenue that you expected to collect. This is really poor accounting and poor operation of this department. We're meeting to talk about what to do about that. I wanted to get the investigation, make sure it wasn't theft. I've concluded that. I'm waiting for the final report, but I've gotten it verbally. I will seek to gain those debts back because the program depends on it. And I am going to offer a discount for those that pay in a certain fashion, and I'm also going to offer the ability to pay in a payment term. A lot of these folks set up payment terms where they would get $100 a month taken out or $200 a month. Yes, they didn't get charged, but they don't have $2,000 to give you at once. And at least one person I talked to didn't get the money taken out. It was in a tax-sheltered child care account, and that money's now gone because they didn't spend it. And you can see the kind of frustrations that I'm dealing with, but also understanding. So it'll be some sort of billing that is as flexible as we can be, but still doesn't put the taxpayers on the line and gets the district as close to whole. If I just send out full bills, I think what you'll get is part of the money and not much of the money, because I think people won't be able to afford to pay. So some kind of graduated thing, like if you pay after 2 weeks of this, you'll get 50%, a month you'll get 75%, and if you need to set up a payment plan, you'll pay in full, but we're happy to spread that out over a year's time. It's gonna be a lot of extra work for my department. We're gonna be in the bill collecting and payment plan system. But it's important, we have to treat our customers, because that's who this was, and our students as we're there for them. That's why we're there. I want you to know about that. I wanted to talk about it because it is going to be difficult for people. I think people will understand, but I think by showing them a little bit of deference and the ability to be flexible on how we get that money back, I think you'll be a lot better off than sending 100% bills out and say, pay it or else. I think we'll be in big. I think that'll be controversial and hard to collect.
I would agree, Tim. That's the right thing to do. Project Keep's a really important after-school program. And, you know, we want to see that continue and keep going. And you're absolutely right. It's the appropriate thing to do, you know, as a district, but also as a community. You work with those households and, as you said, offer discounts, incentives, you know, work with those families. And I'm sorry it's an extra burden on your office. It is what it is. And I appreciate you giving us an update on that. And we'll keep this on the agenda until we sort of get to full closure on that. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Raleigh.
Okay,
Oh,
thanks.
and then Kevin, yeah.
Tim, does this normally close out on June 30th?
This is the close from last June 30th.
Yeah, so, okay, so we can't expect that this year, of course, right? Because they're not going to be able to pay. We're not expecting it, so, all right.
So are these families currently now still utilizing this service and accruing? So these,
They might still be using the service, but everybody's paid to date this year.
this year.
Okay, good.
So that's good news. It's not like they're falling behind and now they're falling behind this year too. Okay.
Nope.
Good.
Got it. So to be clear, for the minutes then, this was for the 2023-2024 academic year.
That's correct.
Okay,
So that's a positive.
that is, yeah.
Jacqueline, I just wondered if you would need a specific proposal or the committee could recommend to the board to give the business office the latitude to send, because I don't have the ability to give people discounts, to make people not pay. People call and ask for sort of things. I don't exercise that ability and don't offer that ability. Don't expect my employees to do that. I would need something from the board. I'd be prepared to bring in an exact plan to the full board, but I can't tell you what that is tonight, so I didn't ask that. But I don't know how if you want it to be specific, you'd have to just let me bring it and hand it to you at the board meeting, because I couldn't have it for the finance committee to consider. Or I can bring it to the next finance center. Can I do that?
You could, but, say it again? Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
so next month, look for a plan and get approval. I just want to be clear that as administrators, none of your administrators has the ability to offer services for free, to make up discounts. That's not in our purview. To donate money to other organizations with the district's money. I don't exercise that, so I would want that approval from you going to the full board.
right. So let's plan on for the March Finance Committee. You'll present a proposal to us. I'm also thinking as well, it would probably be good for us to have legal just look at that and determine what ultimately full board needs to give you directive on. George, I know you're sitting here, but I'm looking for a nod. Do you agree? Should we have legal vetted as well, so that whatever comes to finance in March, we've got some framework, particularly too with what our motion's going to be to then recommend to the full board for the March. Okay? All right. Any other questions, comments on Project Keep? Go ahead, Kevin.
I guess I just one more thing. So, and let me know if this is a prudent comment to make at this juncture. But, one thing that we haven't talked about is why this came about. That's fine, and no names are being mentioned or anything, but as far as like how this situation got to where it is and what has been done in that regard to rectify that issue, as far as, fixing the problem, whether it's just talking to somebody or, obviously straightening out with whatever department was handling it, but I'm assuming those conversations have happened and we fixed the problem and now we're.
I don't think those conversations are completely to fruition, and I wouldn't be able to talk about what those specifics are. But there is still more to do. We're just completing the phase to understanding why it happened and whether it was negligence or fraud, really.
You haven't got the report yet anyway, so.
Right.
Got it.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Tim. Goes without saying, I know ultimately your office and then all of central office, both from a personnel standpoint and financial standpoint, will handle this as you've done with many other things, in smooth fashion and appropriately. Thank you. Okay. Special ed, I don't think we had anything for this month. Okay. Do we have any other? An other?
I have one other, and this is sort of big. You've had a longtime treasurer named Daniel Anashevitz for a long time. He's the Keene School District treasurer when I say you guys. He has been trying to retire from that job for quite some time. I did not find someone to run for that, and he's got a 3-year term, but he wants to be finished. He could just resign and leave us high and dry. The problem is, he's the signer of the checks legally. I'm not. I can't write checks. I do a lot of banking stuff and have a lot of authority in the bank, but I can't sign. I need someone in place before he goes out. And I need that transition to be smooth. I need to have them identified and approved for a time certain, and then have him resign to that time. And then I can do all the back-end electronic stuff that needs to be done to get the electronic signatures, go to the bank. We'll be spending more than a few minutes at the bank, getting all the paperwork signed over. It's a big transition in Keene. I found someone willing to become the treasurer, and I think they're fairly stable, and it's someone that many of you might know. What I don't, and this would just be until the next election. So it's a
Meaning
3-year
this
term.
March, or,
You would,
because what's his current term right now, Mr.
his current
Anashevitz?
term's up in 2 more years, and it ends on a June 30. But the election cycle is March.
Right.
But this is not done in time for anyone to run.
Right.
So it would just be like filling a vacancy until the next election cycle. So this person would go on just in time to be on the election ballot for next March. The difficulty with this is I hope they run and they get on again. It costs a lot of money, time, and effort to change a treasurer. We want them to get on and stay a while.
Right.
But if this is not going to work, I don't want the treasurer to resign. I would rather talk him into staying.
Right.
And I need to know from the board, I need you to take this to the board, to talk about it. If you would approve that, then we would approve it to a date certain, like, let's say, May 1st. And I would have Dan write his resignation and retirement letter for that time. His name is James Carley, who was a board member many times.
Yeah.
And I needed someone I could stay in town, trust, and had time to come into the office. And I think he fits that bill and would be a good replacement. I don't know if he's the best replacement because it's not on the open market. I just want someone appointed to get us through till the next election, and that's who I suggest. And it would be a board discussion for you to take to the board. If that was amenable, then we would pick May 1st. I would know that was going to happen. You would, whenever that vote happened, then I've already talked to Dan about it, but then I'd get Dan to write the letter. What I don't want to have do is someone gets turned down, but Dan's already resigned. We can't be without a treasurer for any length, anytime.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Right. I'm just wanting to make sure I've got my notes right for when you're talking about your timeline. So your hope is, fast forward to full board, I'll present to full board, Mr. Carley to be appointed effective May 1st of 2026, or no, 2025. I'm fast forwarding here.
So they would be appointed as of May 1st with voluntary resignation of Anashevitz.
And May 3rd, would it overlap a month?
There would be no overlap.
So May 1.
I would have Dan effective on the same day, and we would make that transition. But if Dan didn't resign, I just don't, that wouldn't go into effect. Right?
Okay,
We're not pushing it out.
gotcha. And again, that's the reason for the appointment, is so that we have that transition, because obviously it cannot happen for this March election here, which is in a,
And I'm not in a hurry. If it happened June 1st or April, it doesn't matter. I just need enough time to make all that stuff happen.
okay, all right. So is it that you need to speak with Mr. Carley a little bit more to, and Mr. Anashevitz to
I got the
finalize
thumbs
May
up.
or the June?
I got the thumbs up and can make that happen. It all matters what works in your timeline. Like if it can't come up next Tuesday, then it might push it off some. I need at least, I would like at least 30 days to get everything in effect. So that's why I'm pushing it off so far, because
Yeah.
I think Dan's ready to go anytime, but he's patient, and he says, he wanted to go last year. He said, I'll stay till you find somebody. Well, I've kind of ignored him for a year or two, and I think what made me think of it is someone mentioned Jim for the open seat for a few weeks. I don't know who it was. And it was you. And I thought, wait a minute, he might be perfect for this.
And just for a little history, for those who may not know, Jim was on Keene School Board for a number of years. I don't recall how many years.
I think he was here for 9.
For 9 years?
I think he was here 3 terms.
Okay. 2 years?
He was 2.
Oh, 2 terms, 6 years. Okay, very good. Okay, let me open it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let me open it up to comments and questions. Raleigh, go ahead.
Just a clarification.
Wait, oh, you've got your mic on, never mind. You're good.
Okay. Clarification is, Tim, did you mention that, because we have a casual vacancy process for board members, is there one for this, or does this have to, it doesn't need to go through that same process? And so there's no even criteria?
I don't believe that. I believe that in the past, we had a vacancy, and the board can appoint someone until the next election. I think that's it. George would know more.
Yeah, we have a board policy that covers the board vacancies. We do not have one for school district administrative positions. Tim, we might want to have Adam look at this. I'm not even sure that you need the board's approval for what you're doing with Mr. Carley. I was going to run it by Rob rather than taking time out of this meeting. I'm not sure why it would be any different than, well, no, it's an elected position. That's why. Yeah, sorry, I just talked myself right back through it. It's an elected position, but it's not a board member, so our policy doesn't apply, which means it falls back to the state laws governing this, which are much simpler than our board policy. It is literally, you can appoint whoever the heck you want to appoint until the next election cycle. And that's basically the restriction, is they have to be someone who would have been eligible to run, which in this case, I don't know, that probably a Keene resident is your eligibility requirement. And when the next election cycle comes around, they have to run for the remaining term of that position.
I concur with George. What I can do is, before you take action on it,
Yeah.
I guess if I can ask Dan to put his resignation in, he's elected. I can't tell him to resign. When he feels comfortable, and then we'll back into that. And if Jim turns it down or doesn't get he won't turn it down, I don't think. But if you guys don't vote him in, as long as it's enough time, we'll find someone. I think that's the best way to carry on. I found someone I think would be good, but if they don't make cut the mustard, we're gonna have to find somebody.
I would also encourage you to, going back to what George was saying as we were, talking this through, let's have Adam look at state laws, or, he can always check with NHSBA. Let's just find out just so everything's all T's crossed, I's dotted. I don't want to see us go down a path and then all of a sudden, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
I'll be happy to do that, but I think
Okay.
George is 100% correct. But I can still vet it. And so if Dan has a letter next week, we'll bring it up next week. If it's not till after that, we'll bring it up at the next board meeting, I guess. We'll just let it go until that happens. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, next board meeting is next week.
Right, that's what I mean.
Oh, you
It's
can't
either
pull it
next
together
week
for then, you'll do it in
or
March.
next month.
Okay.
Is there anything this committee has to do then? Or is this, we'll go to the Keene
It sounds
board?
like at this point, the committee does not need to do anything. We just need to, as the first step, get Mr. Antashevitz's resignation. And if that happens, then it'll go to full board either next Tuesday or next full board. If we don't get it next Tuesday, and again, this is no pressure on Mr. Antashevitz, then fast forward to March Finance. Do you want to then present anything to March Finance, Tim, or just have it go straight to full
Oh, no,
board?
I'll
It
bring
seems like,
I would bring it to finance.
Okay, very
If
good.
that's when it comes.
yeah, very good, okay. Any other? Okay, seeing none, meeting adjourned at 6:55.